Hello and welcome to the second episode of The Conversation. My name is Graham.
And I'm Malika.
And thank you for coming back and listening to us. As we said last time, this is very new to us, so it's not very polished, but don't you worry. Over the next coming weeks, we'll get it all done and dusted and we'll be better. So, Malika, what have you done since last week?
Well, I've been working, lockdown, Groundhog Day, working every day, and that's it really. Work and turn off the laptop now and again just to try and get some time away from it all. That's it. How about you, Graham?
Pretty much the same. I just realised I was just twizzling on my chair, so I better sit still for a second. But yes, as everyone knows, I'm working in the NHS now, and it is the same thing every day. We're going in and just trying to be as the best we can. I'm supporting the vaccine clinic as well, and it's really rewarding to see people coming in to get in their vaccines and stuff. So it's like you say, it's Groundhog Day. But I think we're getting to a point where the end is nigh. We're recording these in February, so when these come out in March, things may have changed, so you never know.
Fingers crossed, we really hope so. But yeah, as key workers, that's what we do. We just get on with it, don't we? Yeah. I've done some tests as well, been testing staff and children in school, as you know, because I volunteered to do that in my school. So yeah, full PPE.
4 days, and it's uncomfortable, but it's protecting each other, isn't it?
Exactly, it's got to be done. So all the evidence is there to suggest that we need to continue doing what we do. So yeah, fantastic. Keep a distance and just protect each other.
Last week we obviously had a chat about just us. Really, it was great to have a conversation about how we met and how we why we're doing this, and we had a chat with Sarah, didn't we? But this week, obviously, Transgender Day of Visibility is coming up on the 31st. Basically, so we've brought in another friend of ours who can talk a little bit more about this and has their own journey to talk about. So we can be quiet for a little bit, which would be nice, won't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's time for us to really just be quiet, you and I, and give a platform to our guest.
Absolutely. So let's welcome Finlay Games.
Hi, both.
Hello. As if by magic.
Hello, Finlay.
Appear like magic.
No editing involved. Hi, Finn. Thank you very much for joining us on the conversation.
Pleasure. Lovely.
It's a great honour to have you.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Fantastic. As we've said, obviously, we're learning. This is something new. As we're doing this as a podcast and a video cast, so everyone has to forgive us. And I will eventually, by episode 6, stop saying forgive us. But that's the way we are at the moment. But as I said, T-Dove is coming up next week, and basically, there's lots of talk out there. Obviously, in February we have LGBT History Month, but it's still the trans community doesn't have a platform, a visible platform in terms of you've got the LGB. Okay, well, there's a T there, but there's nothing really much done about it. And we've had conversations, on and off really over the past kind of 12 to 18 months really about how we put the T in LGBT. And a few weeks ago, the government kind of stopped beta blockers for young people in terms of stopping puberty. It didn't really get that much press. There was a bit on the BBC, and that's it. These young people, that is huge to them in terms of stopping something that will then cause problems later on in terms of continuing their transition. So I think for us, I want to bring you on. Obviously, I know you've got a book coming out about your own journey, but this is about you telling us about how people like myself and Malika can become visible trans allies.
It's a really good question. I think it's such a tough time right now for our trans community. Trans issues in general are so much further behind the rest of the community. I mean, I think with trans people, we've actually just been watching It's a Sin. And if you look at the way that gay people were seen then, that's pretty much where trans people are now. That kind of real misinformation and lots of the kind of rhetoric around us being of a danger to society in some way. There's lots of that. And unfortunately, the voices of those who are against trans people are very loud. Yeah. And they're actually coming from quite some authoritative figures. Yeah. And they drown out the voices of trans people. Yeah. And unfortunately, that is what's getting heard and not trans voices, which is why Transgender Day of Visibility is so important. Because unfortunately, the other awareness days we have, like Transgender Day of Remembrance, is all about the hatred and violence towards trans people, and remembering those that have lost their lives by suicide or murder just for being trans.
Yeah.
So Transgender Day of Visibility is opposite to that. It's about celebrating trans people, celebrating our lives, our achievements, also celebrating how far we have come, and highlighting, what still needs to be done. But this is a much more uplifting day, which we need right now. Lockdown is really hard. We were saying briefly earlier about the NHS and how much has been stopped. Well, there are now tons of trans people who can't access their surgeries because of lockdown. Trans mental health is already really poor, and now lockdown on top of that, non-access to surgery. And so there's lots of things that people don't realize that are really affecting our trans community right now. And like you said, the case of the puberty blockers, I'm really hoping the appeal goes through, because this has just been a huge blow to our community and to trans rights, really.
Yeah, I think I want to touch on that. You obviously, you spoke about mental health and the impact, and I read a report produced by the LGBT Foundation about the hidden figures research, and basically in terms of the lockdown, it has had a greater impact on the LGBT plus community because they are already in isolation for being who they are. A lot of LGBT people live alone and do have severe mental health issues. Then you kind of say, okay, you need to be isolated. Yes, we've had social bubbles, etc., but they were already on their own, and that's not really been addressed. Mental health broadly hasn't been addressed. They changed their minds about you can opt for exercise, but actually, from my own experience, obviously when I was initially working from home, I was literally on my own for 7 months. And then now I'm back in the workplace. Actually, I'm in a very safe workplace, but now the fact I can talk to another human, pretty much it's through a perspex screen or through 2 meter distance. I'm talking to a human, not through a screen, and that's actually helped me with my own mental health. So I think things get brushed under the carpet too often. And also you mentioned there about obviously voices. And outside the LGBT plus community, there is very loud voices. What we saw throughout 2019 was very loud voices within the LGBT communities, particularly remember London Pride at the start of 2019. I think London Pride, there's a group of LGBT people stopped the parade because they wanted to say something anti-trans. However much we spin on it, especially from Pride in London, in terms of the fact that it was before the actual start, they weren't part of the parade. You can spin on it whatever you want, but at the end of the day, that happened, and that was within our own community, and that's really, really sad.
It's devastating, isn't it? It's really devastating. Dealing with prejudice, hatred, misinformation is hard enough when it's from the wider society. When it's from your own, it's absolutely devastating. I always like to stress, though, this is a minority. The majority of our LGBT community are incredibly accepting and supporting of transgender people. I think a lot of this is really just snowballing because all of the misinformation, and I think what a lot of the anti-trans people are doing is causing a lot of fear, and they're targeting things like women being in danger, young children being in danger, and they're very emotive things, and they fire people up. So when people hear that, they then get carried away. So then there's lots of people that are hearing these things and thinking, oh, we need to protect our young people, we need to protect our females. And actually trans people are not a danger to anybody. It's the other way around. And nobody's trying to convert children to anything. We had this with the gay community years ago, when gay men were like, oh, they can't be around children because they're going to, it's the gay agenda. And we're just recycling the same phobia, the same transphobia as there was back then with homophobia. Fear mongering.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you hit the nail on the head here, Finn, if I may. I've listened to what we've been saying so far, and I just feel, yes, 100%, we hit the nail on the head here. I hear the same issues that I used to hear back in the 80s as a young teenager activist back then, fighting for equal rights, and equal rights means equal rights for those communities who are targeted by this hatred. For me, definitely the LGBT community, it didn't matter where you stood, you were all standing against hatred and against prejudice. And essentially that was our common ground, wherever we came from, no matter our background. And there's always been that sense of solidarity and comradeship together in the same fight. What I found lately is that conflating of issues and deflecting from the real issues, which is taking away the help from those who need it the most. And those voices are drowned. Those voices are drowned. And may I just say, I feel that this is going further because these voices being drowned are also not only being drowned and ignored, they are denied the help that they need and they deserve. And we're now going down to essential human rights issues here. And that fear-mongering has happened over a period of years. And I feel so sad that it's still going on now and that it's not being challenged enough. And I'm just going to ask you, Finn, what can I do? I've been fighting all my life against all this prejudice and this hatred. What can I do to support, to be an ally, to be a better ally, and to support our trans friends better than I have done so far?
We need our allies more than anything right now. And I think it's very important whenever we see anything negative in the press, social media, that we then are retweeting all the positive things. This is why Transgender Day of Visibility is so important, because people need to see and hear from firsthand experiences. So resharing some of the there's amazing books, there's amazing podcasts, there's amazing videos, amazing stories from young trans people, from older trans people, to show that we are a wide variety of people with a huge available information on what it's like to be trans. That needs to be shared. So sharing things like that, doing things like I always say about pronouns, putting pronouns in your bio or in your emails really shows solidarity with trans people as well. I always like to stress with these days of visibility that they're great, but they should be a starting point for permanent work, not just a one-day event. It really annoys me when businesses jump on these things, do something for one day, and that's it. This has to be the start of a conversation where we start talking about the young people that everyone's saying are at risk. Listen to them. It's actually what you're doing to them that's putting them more at risk, taking away their body autonomy, their ability to choose that they want to go through transition. Changing all of that now so they've not got body autonomy is appalling. Listen to these young people that are struggling with what's happening. Listen to how it feels on a day-to-day basis to check into social media, see your identity debated, invalidated on a day-to-day basis. And it's about allies standing up for us in that way, because it's so hard for trans people to be visible because it's not safe. So I think for trans people, allies are even more important than they've ever been, because we need people who are cisgender, because often people who are anti-trans will say all cisgender people feel like this, and we know they don't. So to see cisgender people stand up and say, this is not true, trans people are not dangerous, young people do know what they're talking about in terms of their gender, that's what we need. We need really brave allies to stop conversations when they happen and say, actually, that's wrong. That is what we really need right now from individuals and from companies. Companies, I think, need to do a much better job for trans people, because it's okay having these awareness days and championing the authenticity of your workforce, but actually trans people's needs are very different to everybody else's. We can't be our authentic selves at work if we haven't got access to proper toilets, access to days off for appointments and surgeries. So you have to think differently, get to know the trans people, because we are part of the LGBT community, but we do have very distinct different needs as well. So it's really important.
It's really important when they obviously, you know, as you just said, obviously the T is part of a wider community. However, it's a very different set of concerns or issues that need to be resolved. And that's why I think in the Equality Act, it's really important that gender is separated out from sexual orientation, because they're two very different things. People put them as together, but they're not. One is sexual orientation, one is gender identity. Even in saying it is different. So I completely agree that employers do need to kind of step up and kind of go, oh great, let's have some purple flags out on 2 days of the year. Oh great, let's put the rainbow flag out for 2 months of the year. That's great, but where's the what's next? You know, I'm doing this because, you know, and obviously working with the NHS, we have the rainbow badges, pledges, things like that, and that's actually action orientated. So what are you doing to earn your rainbow badge? which I think is really important. And I think there's something very similar that I could do within the trans community. What are you doing to be an ally? Saying, putting your pronouns at the end of your email is great, but why are you doing that? Some people are always told to. Okay, so you don't really know why you're doing it. I think that's where allyship needs to come in and be a bit more involved. Is go and do a Google search, read both sides of the coin to understand why you need to be an ally and what we need to do. As obviously me and Malika, obviously, we are cisgendered. I'm an out gay man. Malika is an out straight woman, and how can we do it? We just got to keep pushing along. So Zoom's telling me to do something. So it's I get distracted very easily.
Choice. No, but and this is it really. And I think, Finn, I'm so grateful you're on our show and on our conversation today to offer your perspective and your experience. And I think it's really important that those experiences are heard, that really the loud voices that do not represent us, they do not speak on my behalf, that tends to deny your right to exist. They're not my voice, and I don't want to hear those voices. These are not the voices I want to hear day in, day out, but it appears that we've been exposed to that for a long time. And I think I'm really grateful that you've given me some steps to take forward, although it is essentially what you said, the fact that we are now being silenced and we are feeling scared to come forward because of this hostility that's out there that shouldn't be out there.
Hostility, especially for anybody who stands up at the moment. There is, and this is why these kind of conversations are so incredibly important, because we need to hear like firsthand how it feels. I mean, this is why. I mean, I don't have to tell people I'm trans. I am blessed enough to have been finished my transition. I could say nothing, but I absolutely refuse to be quiet about this, because there are lots of people coming after me who have such a bad time of it now compared to what I had. I thought I had it bad enough, but the waiting lists now and the delays for surgery and just what you have to cope with every day is absolutely horrendous. I mean, I do lots of work one-to-one with trans people, and the biggest issue is just the lack of support. There is nowhere they can go. And unfortunately, when they do go to support places, they know nothing about trans people. And so trans and non-binary people are not getting their needs met when they go to alcohol and drug services, self-help places. Even like psychiatrists and counselors are not informed enough. So the services that are skilled to look after young people, trans people, older trans people, are over-resourced, under-resourced, and this is
overwhelmed, yes, and under-resourced.
3 years is an average waiting time now. So it's no wonder that 41% of young trans people are attempting suicide.
Yes. And the statistics are absolutely heartbreaking around that. Absolutely heartbreaking. Any life lost is, it's just upsetting. It's too upsetting for me to be able to discuss, to comprehend. And I just wish that we could now make some positive steps, to reverse that trend that we've seen, that really downward trend in terms of the gains we made. In my opinion, certainly this is how I feel. We've gone backwards, and I just want to reverse that trend now. I just want to reverse that trend in any way we can.
Yeah. Well, there are loads of amazing books written by trans people. There are lots of anthologies of like trans stories. And I always say to people, read those, because the people that say they're speaking on behalf of trans people and protecting us don't protect us. If you want to know what it is to be trans and what we go through, it's from trans people's mouths. And there are some amazing books. I'm always going to say Jessica Kingsley Publishers, because that's my publisher, so I'm always going to give them a shout out. But they have some amazing books written by trans people of various ages. Read those, because that tells you what it really is to be trans, and shows quite clearly that trans people know themselves. We know from a young age who we are. Let's face it, we all know who our gender is, don't we? So for us to be told, no, you don't know, you can't possibly know till this certain time in your life, that's not, that's not the case.
Perspective in terms of that. I knew I was gay from a very young age, so it's exactly the same situation. People know who they are because you're not in their head. Don't tell people who they are, not what they are. And what worries me is, like you talked about, it's a sin at the beginning, and basically I just hope we have to wait 30 years for trans people to be on par with everyone else in society. There's still a lot of work to be done in terms of equality and intersectionality, but actually let's not wait 30 years. Let's have the conversation now. You know, we had the 2 surveys done, the white paper didn't be by government, and it's a case of that's just kind of like disappeared into an ether of Brexit and unfortunately the pandemic. Where did that go? You know, sorry, the surveys, I remember, I was trying to think of the words, but you know, we just need to keep lobbying with members of parliament about, okay, where has this gone, what's happening with it, and listening to others, because, you know, like, as you kept saying, listen to trans people and not speak for them. And that's exactly the same thing we were doing way back in the 80s. Obviously, I wasn't born, but you know, people are like, listening to the LGBT community, don't speak for them. And I think that's where we are now. And, you know, hopefully we can come together. And, you know, for me, on the 31st of March, I will put on social media a pledge about how am I going to be a trans ally. And I'm sure Malika will be the same. You know, and that's what people need to see, not you know, being commercialised. You know, we talked about the pink pound a few years ago. Let's have a purple pound, because you know, that won't work.
Yeah. Another thing is really good idea to do as well. If you look on either Mermaids, Gendered Intelligence, or Stonewall, they have pre-written letters that you can send to your MP around issues like body autonomy, gender neutral toilets, which is a current issue that they're throwing back up again. Using those templates to write to your local MP is also a really good idea, because especially from cis people, we need to hear that cis people are on our side as well.
Yeah, I remember, because I used to be working in a higher education institution previously, you know, and you know, the organisation I worked for basically pledged to be the first trans inclusive university in the UK. Bold statement, but in terms of the backup from that, it wasn't great in terms of the fact that, you know, well, what we're going to do, we were able to universities much further ahead in the field, and you know, the biggest campaign that they did was gender neutral toilets. So now across the campus there is different pockets of toilets which are they're just a toilet, not men's toilets, women's toilets. But I want to see, in the future, this might sound really sad, I want Ally McBeal bathrooms across the whole of the country where everyone was in there. You know what I mean? It's a toilet. You know, it's not
exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So it's a start of a journey, but you know, let's hope we can try and get further along the field. Now,
absolutely.
I'd love to be able to talk to you all day about this, and we're literally only going to scratch the surface. I'm sure you'll come back and talk to us again about a bit further, but I just want to say thank you very much for helping us learn podcasting, because you are an expert. And obviously, if you haven't seen Invincible, you know, go and check Finn's YouTube site out, and obviously we will put some links at the end of the video. But thank you for coming along and helping us on this, and you know, people who are listening or watching, they'll take something from this.
Thank you very much for having me. Thank you.
Thank you once again.
Well, Malika, what can we say?
I don't have anything else to add after what Finn said, and I think I think everything's been said, really, hasn't it? I think we need to now do our bit, really, and continue doing our bit. I'm an old veteran now, activist, and I feel so tired of fighting the same battles over and over again, and seeing that what Finn said today, you know, it speaks to me, and I my heart breaks, because I just can't believe we're having to fight that, you know, sort of thing again without using some other words. But it seems to have become even more disgusting now, you know, is what I'm feeling. Do you know what I mean? Back in the 80s, it was what, you know, we were having those fights and we were standing up against people with prejudice, you know, do not touch my friend, that's my friend you're talking about. But now it's happening in the unknown, you know. Trans people are opening their accounts on Twitter and on Facebook and whatever, and they're exposed to that hatred constantly. And I feel, part of me feels there's more needs to happen somehow. The question is, what do we do next to stop that?
You know, Finn hasn't said everything today, he has started the conversation. I think now, as we kind of approach the 31st of March in a couple of days, we kind of go, right, okay, what are you going to do to pledge to say how we're going to be more of an ally? And I think there's so much more work to be done. And as Finn said, it's not about commercialising. This is about the day-to-day, you know. I was victimised for being who I am. I know you've been victimised for who you are. That should stop. It's 2021 and it's still happening. You know, in a couple of episodes' time, we're talking about Black Lives Matter, and actually, you know, it's still all these pockets of hostility, and it's all on social media. What are we going to do?
Yeah. I mean, it's throwing up a lot of questions, and it's really put in question a lot of my activism where I've been the past few years. And I think even my voice has been silenced, and I've not been a good ally for trans friends. And I want to apologize to them. I want to apologize right now. I'm apologizing for not having been the ally that I used to be, because we've been beaten down. You know, these loud voices out there, they're not us. They're not us. They're not who we are as a society, you know. And
I would
really
echo that, and I would like to apologise too, because even though I'm part of the LGBT plus community, our trans siblings are going through a very different battle, very similar to what the gay community did a few years ago. But now it's I want to learn and understand, not make assumptions, and that's how, you know, speaking to Finn, working with Finn, reading his material, I get an understanding. I'm very much learning.
Yeah, that's what we need to do. Read those experiences, listen to those experiences. They are the ones that are teaching us how to be a better human being. How can we change ourselves if we're not going to listen to those voices? And that's what we need to do more and more.
Speak for us, listen to us.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I think we've come to another end of another episode, Malika. So you know, it's only episode 2, but you know, it's a lot of work for us to put these through. I mean, just geographically, you know, you're down south, I'm up north, and everything's going on with our jobs. But you know, it's been really good to start these conversations, and you know, I'm looking forward to the next one. But you know, we'll put some links at the end. So if you're watching this on the video version, you know, we'll put some links at the end of the video. So I'm stuttering now. I don't know why. But yeah, you know, like Finn said, you know, do check out Mermaid, Gendered Intelligence, and Stonewall if you want to know absolutely more. But for now, my name's Graham.
And I'm Malika.
And you've been listening to The Conversation.
Thank you.